Hi, Brenda.
Hi, Ivonne. How's it going?
It's going. I'm doing much better.
Yeah, I'm doing much better from last week too. I might not sound really like me, but I'm doing much better than I was last week. So
Thank
yeah, I'm
goodness,
so
huh?
glad we're able to get together and do this finally after how many
Yes.
months of okay, no, I can't do it. No, yes, I can. No, I can't. Yeah, I know. Life,
Illness and scheduling
I
got in the
know.
way.
Yeah, like life got in the way. What's going on with that, right?
Absolutely.
So I have been looking over your website, the Jelly Roll Club website, and it was like going to Pinterest, where you start looking at thousands of ideas. You have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of free patterns over there.
Yeah.
I cannot wait for the people that follow me to start looking at your stuff too. I think that would be so cool because there's a those free patterns are cute. Like good grief, they're cute.
Well, one of the things that I like to do is I call myself, and I'm going to say it, and I might regret it, free, easy, and cheap. I like to find all of the methods that are free, easy, and cheap. And one of the best methods I have is drawing my own patterns. And so I like to draw. My daughter's an artist, and so she's a graphic designer. And one of the things that I love to do is I love to sketch and draw and run things by her. And so when I create those, that's how my applique patterns are born. And I also like to use design software, like I use EQ8, and I like to play with blocks. And so I'm more of a fiber artist than necessarily a traditional quilter. And so I take, and to me, quilting is an expression of trapped inside your head, maybe part of your personality as well. That's why my quilts are loud and colorful. So, like, I'm an Aries, and so I'm the first sign of the zodiac. And so when I make a quilt, it needs to scream happy, joyful, it needs to be colorful. It needs to say, look at me, I'm happy, because
I'm
that's how I feel when I'm making them.
I'm an Aries Taurus, right on the cusp. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, that's kind of cool. Yeah, you kind of like let's be loud. Let's make this quilt loud.
Yeah. Most of my quilts are very brightly colored.
Yeah,
Rarely do I use things that are not bright. So, like, this is an example of, like, this is my favorite, like, yellow. I love batiks. I love layers of color and texture on top of each other. And so,
yeah, I know. I like I like all of the colors. I have the biggest problem playing with brown, but the more you play with something that you have problems with, the easier it gets, right? So,
yeah, I
I,
love I love using grays, because grays to me seem such like a muted color.
yeah,
But the more I play with grays, the more I like to use them, just not in large quantities.
yeah. I know they're kind of like a little bit here and there sprinkled about. Yeah, they'll look great. So, do you consider yourself a quilter or a fiber artist
I'm
or a
actually
combination of, you know?
I'm actually both. I started out as a quilter. I learned to quilt when I was 14, and I made very traditional patterns like a sunbonnet Sue. It was called a Dutch doll back when I started making. So the very first quilt I made was in forest green and cranberry red, and it was a sunbonnet Sue, a very traditional hand pieced, hand applique. So I started out as a quilter, but as I got older and I explored the craft, I became a fiber artist. And so I make three-dimensional objects, and I use wool roving, and I love making things such as, like, this pumpkin here, and so anything with fabric, if you can poke a needle in it, I like to touch it. I also like to use yarn on my quilts. I like to use embellishments. I like to use ribbon. So rickrack, anything that you give me. I might even use like a chenille stick or something on something I
Oh,
sew. It just depends on what I'm doing.
yeah, well, there are lots of fun and lots of interesting textures now too in the yarns that you can use just to, crouch onto your quilt. It's amazing what you can get.
Yeah, my next quilt is going to have chenille in all of the sashing because I want like a texture to my next quilt. So we'll see what happens.
Ooh, that would be cool. So, what made you start your quilting journey?
So I began by hanging out at a local quilt shop, and this was I guess it was about a decade ago. It was 2012. And so jelly rolls were just starting to be like a big push in all the quilt shops. You started seeing stacks of pre-cuts. It was in the early days of what I call the pre-cut frenzy. And
Yep.
so I started every time I'd go in the quilt shop and I'd see a beautiful jelly roll, I'd pick one up and I stack them on a shelf. And then I picked up another jelly roll and I'd stack it on a shelf. But I really didn't know what to do with them. And so I just kept buying these jelly rolls. And so fabric collecting and quilting are two different hobbies. And so once I had this bookshelf stacked with jelly rolls, this entire shelf, I probably had like 40 jelly rolls. I thought, what am I going to do with it? My husband walked in my sewing room. He goes, what are you going to do with all those little roly things that look like, desserts? I said, well, I don't know. And so I went to the quilt shop and they were hosting a jelly roll race. And so
Okay.
I did that. And several of the people there were talking about, like, well, what other ways could we use our jelly roll? So if you bought a jelly roll there, you could do a race. And so I said, well, we could form a group and we could find patterns and make jelly rolls together. And so the jelly roll club started. So we would meet together once a month. We would bring our patterns together and we would sew on a quilt from start to finish using all of our jelly rolls. And so it gave us a way to use our jelly rolls, and the jelly roll club was born
Very
during
cool.
yeah, during the pandemic. Of course, everything shut down and we were not allowed to meet in person. And so somebody suggested that we start doing jelly roll stuff online. And so then the next thing you know, I started doing jelly roll club online, and we went from 30 people local to 13,000 people all over the place. So it got big really quick.
Well, that's good though,
Yeah.
because obviously you were fulfilling a need, right? Being on
Yes,
YouTube and all of that. Yeah, I guess great.
absolutely.
So with your Jelly Roll Club, like what, like you have this club, you look at like trading patterns and doing stuff with jelly rolls. That's not only what this club's about. There's other things that this club's on for.
Yeah, the so what ended up happening is that jelly rolls form the foundation, right? So jelly rolls are the bottom layer. So every quilt has a jelly roll component to it. So for example, the one that we're just finishing up, all of the sashing is made out of jelly rolls. And most of the applique pieces fit within a jelly roll. So if you notice the tree trunks, and a lot of the pieces are sized to fit inside of a jelly roll strip so that
Oh,
you could use all your scrappy jelly roll bits that you have left over and make most of the blocks behind me. And so that's why it's part of the jelly roll club. So the bulk of them are leftover jelly roll strips. And you can even do like what I call composite jelly rolls. So like this is an example. If you take adding machine tape and you put all your bits together, next thing you know, you have this composite jelly roll strips. And so anything and everything that I can do to save all my bits and bobs, I use them together. And
oh,
so
yeah.
almost every quilt uses some type of jelly roll element.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool indeed. Yeah. So now, all right, with all this like fiber artist and being a quilter and all this stuff, are you a traditional, modern, or scrappy?
I would say that I'm more of a scrappy quilter than more traditional or modern. So like a modern quilt has like a very clean aesthetic. So
Yes.
I'm more of a traditional in the sense that I like, like traditional quilts can sometimes be visually cluttered
Yeah.
because of the all of the different patterns and prints and colors. Um, so my stuff leans towards the traditional, but uses a lot of kind of contemporary techniques in it.
Yeah, because applique is very, very traditional,
It's
right?
very traditional.
But you're presenting that applique in a very different way, right? So that looks
Yeah, yes, and I use a bunch of different techniques. I use needle turn. I use like a starch method. I used fusible. I used raw edge. I tried to explore 12 different ways to applique in this particular project so that people could figure out which method works for them.
yes. And a lot of people they oh no, there's only one way. When you start introducing all these other ones, next thing you know, they found a seventh or eighth or whatever, and they're off running. Yeah.
Yeah, people don't realize there's reverse applique, there's needle turn applique, there's back basted applique, there's raw edge applique,
Yep.
there's fusible applique.
When I used to applicate, did it quite a bit differently than I do now.
Yeah.
I mean, that was, so I guess that's the way you grow. I don't like doing it that old fashioned the way I was taught. And then I changed it. I go did something else. Don't like that anymore. So yeah, it evolves. Your skill evolves, right, as you move
Yeah.
along. So it's good idea sometimes to know more than one way of doing something.
Yeah, I do. I like to use skill builders as a foundation for all my projects. So start with the easy, move on to something more complex. I think that always growing your skills or expanding what you do is kind of helpful. I like to kind of empower quilters to take whatever I give them and make it their own. I do the math. I'm a math person. So I know that there's 16 2.5-inch squares inside a jelly roll strip. I know there's 2.75 yards inside a traditional jelly roll. I know that one layer cake square is the equivalent of one jelly roll strip. And so like I have all of these math things in my head. So there are some math charts on my website because I love math. I'm married to an engineer. So I guess math almost 30 years together. So I guess math is one of the things that we have in common that binds us, even though
Yeah.
he's very much an engineer and I'm very much an artist. Math is what links us together.
Yeah, my husband's IT guy, and and then of course, then I'm doing, and he's just like, yeah, there's we've been together a while too, not as long as you two, but yeah, but it's very very different personalities of what we like to do, and it's like somehow that works, That's good.
I'm my own IT person right now. I'm working on a new website. So we'll see how it goes.
Excuse me, sorry. Now, do you make charity quilts, and do you have a bit of time to chat about your charity?
So yeah, one of the things that I like to do is I like to make quilts. So like I'm I've made a couple of quilts of valor, and I think that's an extremely worthwhile charity. This one behind me is actually mine because I'm a veteran, but recently my granddaughter's other grandparents, her papa on that side of the family is a veteran, and I found out that he had never gotten a quilt of valor. So recently I made one for him.
Oh wow.
And the other one is that I like to do is for quilts for children in foster care. Now I've made like blankets for like the Linus Project. So those are like those little tiny blankets that you give to the local hospital for
Yeah.
children who are having surgeries and whatnot. And so anyone that has a charity, I've done little dresses for Africa. So a few years back, Nancy Zeman was collecting little dresses that you could make out of a pillowcase or a yard of fabric. And you would send those off and they would pack those together and missionaries would take those to Africa. So pretty much any charity that takes things made out of fabric. And if I can do it, like the Million Pillowcase Project, I've done pillowcases for that. So pretty much anything.
Yeah, I tend to, well, I just made a big donation there of my UFOs, because in here we have so many charities that we have to give to, that are willing to take quilts, right? So I mean, yeah, some went for, all sorts of different things that was going on. Right? And Sleep in Heavenly Peace was one of them. Quilts of Valor is another one I like to sew for, but you know, there's so many charity. I just sit here some days and I make charity blocks, right?
Yeah,
So,
we made masks during the pandemic. I probably made over 2,000 masks that I gave away.
yeah,
I didn't sell them. A lot of people were selling them. I did not. I felt like I had this big stash of fabric. So like my stash is going to exceed my life expectancy. So I figured I would just start using all of my fabric and I donated over 2,000 masks to
yeah,
schools and kids and places. And when people couldn't find them, that's what I did. I literally hung a hook outside my mailbox and I would post them, on Marketplace and say free masks, come by and get some. And people
yeah.
would swing by and
Well, it was a scary time. I masked out at 500 masks. I was done. I did not want to sew another mask as long as I lived. But yeah. So, what was the most heartfelt quilt that you ever made?
the
Tell me.
most heart
free.
The most heartfelt quilt I've ever made, I made for a lady that was local, and she wanted me to take all of the onesies and the t-shirts for her two youngest boys and make a memory quilt for them. But in that quilt, I incorporated the tiny receiving blanket for a stillborn that she had. And so I took all of those little bits of that hospital receiving blanket, and I integrated it into that project. And so that was pretty special. And when I handed her that quilt, she cried. And I normally don't do those kinds of projects. I don't do services for hire type of thing. I usually just make quilts for friends and family
Yeah.
that I give as gifts, or I donate projects. And that one was one of the few that I've made that she asked me, and just her reaction when she looked at that quilt and she held it and she cried, it touched me in a way that a lot of my other quilt projects haven't, you know.
Yeah. Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'm getting so used to coughing, I don't even apologize anymore. Well, the last and final question.
Yes.
Then the interrogation is over. You have a YouTube channel and a website. What are your plans for the future? Oh, you also have a Facebook page too, and we're going to
I
need links to
do.
all of that. But what are your plans for the future? Everybody's asking, what are you going to do in 2023?
Well, I have a 5-year plan of what's going on my website. So for this coming year, we're going to do the table runner of the month, and so I have a different table runner that we're going to be finishing. I have one quilt that's going to be wrapping up in the spring, and it was called the Dresden Project. And so it's like a giant garden applique quilt. But after that, I have several things that will include a variety of piecing and also applique. So every year there's going to be something. So like the table runner of the month has for January has like an optional penguin that you can applique on placemats. It goes with the table runner. So it's called
Oh,
a black tie affair. So a
oh,
little penguin
very
has a
cute.
bow tie.
Oh, very cute.
And so I've planned a theme. Yeah, there's a theme for every year for the next 4 or 5 years. And so table runners are next year. I may do wallets, purses, and small sewables. I have an entire series of like wearables. So like jackets take all those yucky UFO blocks. And so I'm going to show you different ways to make like maybe a jacket or a hat, or even, like a hand warmer using all quilted and orphan blocks. And so there's going to be a whole set of wearables that are coming down the pike.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, I was going to do something with orphan blocks as well, but I didn't want to do the, oh, let's make a pot holder. Let's make a pillow. Let's,
No,
ugh.
no, I think I want to make a coat of many colors. And this is one of the reasons why I'm saving all my jelly rolls like this in this configuration, because I'm going to make giant, giant panels of what I call composite fabric, all in one color. So like all blues and all reds and all yellows, that you can turn those into wearable art.
Oh, wow. Very cool.
And
Very,
so I'm saving, don't waste anything. These little bits are all going to end up in there.
I know I have a box of little bits that you put that light Ivonne light on or whatever. And of course, once you peel it away, then you got the little leftover bits, and it's kind of, well, no, those bits can be used. It's like less is like you're collecting garbage.
No, use free, easy, and cheap. That this
Yeah,
is free.
right.
This is free fabric. I've already paid for this, and so by putting it on adding machine paper is cheap. It's a couple of dollars for a whole roll, and and it's a great way you can store them in a shoebox. Just take all your scraps; they're already ironed and pressed. Just put them on this stuff, roll them into sections that are like 20 inches long, and just keep doing that. And guess what? Next thing you know, you've got a yard of composite fabric that you could use
Yeah.
for something else.
Well, yeah, and it's a great way to put between crumbs, like crumb blocks and stuff
Exactly.
like that. Yeah, it's just yeah, it would be a lot of fun. That those quotes would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, they are.
We get too
And
many
it's
ideas.
free. It's free fabric.
Yeah, but we do get way too many ideas. So I mean that's part of it too. So any last and parting words?
No, just hello to all your followers. I love Brenda's channel. I watch it as often as I can. I get all kinds of ideas too. So sharing is caring.
Yes.
I share with you, you share with me, let's share together.
That's right. We should. We should all share together several times over because I feel all of us have the same voice.
Exactly.
I might be losing mine right now, but we all have this, we all have an important voice. And it doesn't matter if you're a YouTuber doing quilting or a quilter in your home in your sewing room, your voice is just as important, right? So everybody needs to share.
Well, and you know what I love about the quilting community and the sewing community in general is most quilters and sewers are extremely generous of heart and spirit, and they love to give. Most quilters that I know make quilts not for themselves, but for everybody else.
Yeah.
Very few quilters just keep and hoard all the quilts for themselves. They typically become gifts and they're for the comfort and love of other people. And so quilters tend to be very generous people, and I love quilters.
Yep. Okay, you guys take care, and I hope everybody has an amazing week. Okay,
You too,
bye.
Brenda. Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
My husband and I would love to thank you for coming along with us on our little fun adventure here that we're having. We do have a Facebook group now, and that Facebook group is got some very, very talented quilters in there, and we love sharing and you know, posting pictures and commenting, and it's been a lot of fun. And the advantage of the Facebook group is sometimes I drop patterns in there early, so you kind of get a hint as to what is coming next. After the nosegay sew along, we're going to be doing curves boot camp right away. So we'll get you sewing those curves, and it'll be fun. It'll be a lot of interesting little blocks that we've got to work on. But we would like you to share, like, and subscribe. Telling your friends about us and letting them know that you kind of like our channel, that means so much to us here. So you take care. You have a fabulous week ahead. Okay, bye.